Margaret sat quietly on the worn bench, watching the steady stream of people hurrying past on the busy downtown street. At 24, she had learned to make herself small, invisible. Her blonde hair fell softly around her shoulders, framing a face that still held traces of the hopeful young woman she had once been. The oversized tan coat wrapped around her like armor against both the autumn chill and the curious stares of passers-by. She held a simple cardboard sign in her lap, the words written in careful block letters, but it wasn't asking for money or food. It simply read, "Lost my job. Just need someone to listen." Most people walked by without a glance. That was okay with Margaret. She had learned that sometimes just being seen was enough. Robert Harrison adjusted his navy blue suit jacket as he stepped out of the gleaming office building. At 58, he had built his investment firm from nothing into one of the city's most respected companies. The leather briefcase in his hand contained contracts worth millions. His silver hair was perfectly styled, and his presence commanded attention wherever he went. But something made him pause on this particular Tuesday morning. Perhaps it was the way the young woman sat so still on the bench. Or maybe it was her sign, so different from what he expected. Robert had walked this route to his car every day for 15 years, and he had seen many people asking for help, but never quite like this. He found himself walking toward her. "Excuse me," Robert said gently, his voice carrying the warmth of someone who had learned over the years that true success wasn't measured only in dollars. "I couldn't help but notice your sign." Margaret looked up, startled. Most people either ignored her completely or dropped coins without making eye contact. But this man in the expensive suit was actually looking at her, really seeing her. "I'm sorry," she said quietly, starting to fold the sign. "I'll move if I'm bothering." "No, please." Robert raised a gentle hand. "You're not bothering anyone. I was just curious. What happened?" Something in his tone made Margaret pause. There was no judgment there, no pity, just genuine human interest. "I was a teacher," she said softly. "Elementary school. Budget cuts took my position 3 months ago. I've been applying everywhere, but—" She shrugged, a gesture that held a world of disappointment. "It's harder than I thought it would be." Robert studied her face as she spoke. He had conducted thousands of job interviews over the decades, and he had learned to read people. What he saw in Margaret's eyes wasn't desperation or manipulation. It was simple, honest vulnerability. And something else. A quiet dignity that reminded him of his own mother during the difficult years after his father's death. "What did you teach?" he asked, settling onto the bench beside her. The question caught Margaret off guard. When was the last time someone had shown interest in who she was, not just her circumstances? "3rd grade," she replied, and for the first time since their conversation began, a small smile touched her lips. "I loved watching them discover that they could read whole books by themselves. That moment when their eyes would light up." Robert nodded slowly. He remembered that feeling from his own childhood. Mrs. Patterson, his 3rd-grade teacher, had been the first adult outside his family to believe he could achieve something special. From his wallet, Robert pulled out something that made Margaret's breath catch. It was a credit card, but unlike any she had ever seen. Completely black, with no visible numbers or text except for a small logo she didn't recognize. "I want you to have this," Robert said simply. Margaret stared at the card, then back at him. I can't accept this. I don't even know you." "My name is Robert Harrison," he said with a gentle smile. "And I'm not giving this to you as charity. I'm giving it to you as a test." "A test?" Margaret's voice was barely above a whisper. Robert nodded. "This card has no limit. You could buy anything you wanted. A car, a house, designer clothes, expensive jewelry, or—" He paused meaningfully. "You could use it in whatever way feels right to you. The choice is entirely yours. All I ask is that you meet me back here in exactly 1 week. Same time. Will you do that?" Margaret turned the mysterious card over in her hands. It felt different from regular credit cards. Heavier somehow. More substantial. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. Robert was quiet for a long moment, his eyes distant with memory. "Because 30 years ago, someone took a chance on me when I had nothing. A woman named Eleanor Chen gave me my first real job when no one else would hire a kid from the wrong side of town with more dreams than qualifications. She changed my life. He stood up, straightening his jacket. Sometimes we're given opportunities to pass that gift forward. Consider this one of those moments. As he walked away, Margaret called after him. What if I disappoint you? Robert turned back with a smile that held 3 decades of hard-earned wisdom. My dear, I don't think that's possible. 7 days later, Robert found himself walking toward the same bench with unusual nervousness. He had built his fortune on reading people correctly, but something about this situation felt different. More personal, more important. Margaret was already there, sitting in almost the exact same position as the week before. But something had changed. There was a lightness in her posture, a brightness in her eyes that hadn't been there before. You came back, she said as he approached. Did you think I wouldn't? Robert replied, settling beside her once again. Margaret smiled. A real smile this time, full and warm. I wasn't sure if this whole week was just a beautiful dream. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out the black card, offering it back to him. Thank you, she said simply. Robert looked at the card but didn't immediately take it. Tell me about your week. Margaret's eyes grew bright with unshed tears, but they were tears of joy, not sorrow. I spent the first 2 days just staring at it, afraid to use it. Then I remembered what you said about choice. She took a breath, gathering her thoughts. I bought groceries for Mrs. Chen down the hall from me. She's 83 and her Social Security barely covers her medications. Then I paid for 3 months of lunch accounts for kids at my old school. The ones whose families are struggling. Robert found himself leaning forward, genuinely curious about what came next. I bought winter coats for the children at the homeless shelter where I volunteer on weekends. And I paid the utility bills for 2 families in my building who were facing shutoffs. Margaret paused, looking almost embarrassed. I kept track of everything. The total was $4,637. And for yourself? Robert asked gently. Margaret's cheeks colored slightly. I bought a nice interview outfit, and I got my hair cut. I have 3 job interviews scheduled for next week. Robert finally took the card from her outstretched hand, but instead of putting it away, he held it thoughtfully. You know, when Eleanor Chen hired me all those years ago, she told me something I've never forgotten. She said that character isn't revealed in grand gestures, but in what we do when no one is watching. He looked directly into Margaret's eyes. But you were being watched. By everyone you helped. By families who will have heat this winter because of your kindness. By children who will eat lunch because you remembered what it felt like to care about them. Margaret felt tears beginning to flow. But they were the healing kind of tears that wash away months of feeling invisible and worthless. I have a proposition for you, Robert said, pulling a business card from his wallet. Harrison Investment Group has been looking for someone to head our new community outreach program. Someone who understands both struggle and generosity. Someone who sees possibility in people that others might overlook. Margaret stared at the card in disbelief. But I'm a teacher. I don't know anything about investment or business. You know about people, Robert replied. You know about making wise choices under pressure. And you've just demonstrated something that can't be taught: integrity. He stood up, preparing to leave. The job starts Monday if you want it. The salary is more than enough to build a comfortable life. And Margaret? She looked up at him through her tears. Keep the card. Consider it your discretionary budget for the outreach program. I have a feeling you'll know exactly how to use it. As Robert walked away for the second time, Margaret sat in wonder on the bench where her life had changed forever. Around her, the city continued its endless rhythm, but she was no longer invisible. She had been seen, tested, and found worthy. More than that, she had learned something profound about herself. When given the power to take anything, she had chosen to give instead. And in that choice, she had discovered who she really was. The next Monday, Margaret Harrison. She had decided to take Robert's surname as a symbol of new beginnings. Walked into the gleaming offices of Harrison Investment Group. She wore her new interview outfit with confidence, her hair catching the morning light streaming through the windows. She had work to do, people to help, lives to change. just as hers had been changed by an unexpected encounter with kindness on a downtown street, when a stranger decided to see her not as she appeared, but as who she could become. And in seeing her truly, he had helped her see herself the same way. The end.